Good morning and welcome back to Coffee Break. Back, I don't know how long ago, but we talked about how to start a book club. We're in a book club together, so obviously we know some stuff.
Obviously we're experts at
Right.
everything about this. Yeah. Today we're going to be talking about how to pick a good book for your book club to discuss.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you'd think it would be as simple as, like, looking at the New York Times bestseller list and being like, okay, these are clearly books that people like, I'll just pick one of these.
Right.
But I think it's a lot trickier than that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's different than just, this is a really good book that my friend is recommending to me.
Mm-hmm.
That might be a good book club book, but anyways, why we think this is different is because book club is about discussion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you want to pick books that will generate really good, thoughtful discussion and make sure that all of the people in your book club are pretty equally participating.
Yeah.
Which can be tricky to do. So we've got some ideas on how to make this easier.
Yeah, I think it's really fun to do some genre hopping.
Mm-hmm.
I would recommend choosing a book from a different genre than the one that you just read.
Right.
Especially genres that either your other book club members are kind of wary of reading, they haven't read it before, or genres that you've never read.
Mm-hmm.
It's really great to jump into new territory.
Yeah, because, if you're in a book club with your friends, you probably all have pretty similar tastes, and I think it's easy to say, oh, I really want to read this book, let's pick this one, and get in that rut of, picking the same kind of book over and
Right.
over. But, yeah, I think, when you mix up the genres, it keeps things fresh, and, there's no, oh, which one was the one with the, disinherited rich kid, you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. So it's good to keep each book distinct, and that way you're jumping around to different genres, so if you find a genre that appeals to one person more than another, that person can help facilitate the discussion. And
Right.
something that might be a little bit surprising, I think it can be good to pick a book that a few of the book club members have actually read before. I mean, make sure they're okay with rereading it and everything, but yeah, I mean, when you've got someone coming in at it with absolutely no preconceived notions, and you get that fresh perspective, but then you also get the perspective of someone who has, familiarity with this text.
It's kind of surprising, like we talked about, don't necessarily pick a book that you're gonna love. A crowd pleaser does not necessarily generate good discussion. We often talk about books, we kind of have a different time where we recommend books to each other that we've read outside of book club, of you should read this, but it wouldn't be good for book club.
Right, exactly, because, yeah, I mean, say you pick a book and everybody falls in love with it, and then you just talk about how much you like it, and then that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I love this book, Miki's and the Donkey, and it won a Batchelder Award, so, it's a really, really good book, and a heartfelt story, and, it's just really warm and endearing.
Yeah.
But, it's about a boy whose, best friend is a donkey, and they have all these little adventures with all these interesting characters, but there's not really anything to discuss, you know what I mean? I think it's more important to pick a book that's going to be controversial, something that, two people in your book club will react differently to the same thing. That's what makes it interesting, is when people have very different perspectives on the same thing.
Yeah. I think it's okay to say, I don't necessarily like all of the books that I've read for book club,
Right.
but I don't regret reading any of them.
Yeah.
It's been really good to get me to read things that I wouldn't have picked up on my own, and to get other people's thoughts about, even if I still say at the end of the day that I didn't like that book, just the discussion is always really fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think there's something, too, about, reading a book that you normally wouldn't read and then finding out you don't like it, and it's okay, well, I'm not a big fan of this genre. It helps to give you more self-knowledge, even in that regard.
Yeah.
So how do you pick the perfect book club book, then?
You follow all of our tips, obviously.
There you go. I think, like we said, controversial books are the best. So find a book that has, maybe a shocking plot twist or really ambiguous characters. And, yeah, bounce around to different genres, but try and find something that, people will have opinions about and strong feelings about.
Maybe it deals with a topic that is hard to read about, or that you just haven't read very much of.
Yeah.
I think Crazy is a good example of this. We recommend it, but there's also a lot to discuss. It's written in verse, which maybe a lot of people don't read books written in verse, and it deals with mental illness.
Yeah, and Crazy also has its own discussion guide available online, so like that's a good place to start.
Right.
When you're reading a book, you can look up, lots of authors and publishers have discussion guides available on their websites. So that's a good place to say like, oh look, these are the different things we can discuss.
Yeah, and even if you don't follow the exact questions on the discussion guide, at least then you know there are things to discuss with this book.
Yeah. So if you have any other ideas or tips for picking a good book for your book club, let us know in the comments. We would love to hear from you.
Or you can contact us on Twitter at CoffeeBreakEBUAR. And thank you for joining us. Happy reading in your book club. We'll see you next week.
And has read it before.